Look, this Oumar Ballo stuff for Indiana basketball, it's bad news for the Hoosiers and a bad look for Mike Woodson.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Thank you so much for making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Happy New Year's Eve. Yes, the final day of 2024. We'll do some New Year's resolutions for Indiana athletics, football, and basketball. We're also going to talk about two big names that have confirmed, one returning and one officially signing with Indiana football, one defensively and one offensively. But we've got to start with what appears to be and seems to be the biggest news around Indiana athletics. And stop me if you've heard this before. It's bad news. And Indiana's in the headlines again for all the wrong reasons. And it is Mike Woodson's Indiana men's basketball program. And it is surrounding the fact that Oumar Ballo, who was your top-rated transfer, some rated him as the top transfer in the portal the last cycle, the one who was coming in from Arizona to replace Khalil Ware, who is now playing in the NBA. You bring him in to replace that guy, possibly be that guy, and he didn't play the other day against Winthrop on a Sunday afternoon in the non-conference finale. Wonder why. Rumors started flying around, and I told you yesterday that I started hearing things and people started telling me things, but I didn't want to buy into them until I had cold, hard facts. I think we got one now. I think we've got the fact we were looking for. And if you've seen the photograph that has started to, or not started, that is circulating around everybody who wears and supports this logo and these colors, or anybody that's in the college basketball world, everybody has seen the photo. What is allegedly Indiana Basketball Center Oumar Ballo at a bar the night before the Indiana and Winthrop basketball game. No confirmation, nothing said yet from Indiana, but that's what's circulating, and that's what people are talking about. And Mike Woodson's comments, as I very clearly reacted to yesterday and will continue to do today, he said in postgame, I'm not going to address it. We'll sit down tomorrow. That would have been yesterday on Monday, and we'll address it internally. Well, I've got news for you. This is a terrible look for Mike Woodson, and this is bad news for Indiana because you went and got this guy against what some people said, right? Some people said, don't touch him. Some people said that he is lazy. Some people said he is slow. Some people said he's not ready for that level of basketball yet. And while I could see that, I thought he was still a really great pickup. Do not get me wrong. I'm not trying to walk back anything that I've said. I still think Oumar Ballo could be a really good basketball player here at Indiana at this level in the Big Ten. But you go and get him. And for a guy that, I'll say it, I think is underwhelmed, has underperformed so far this season in the 12 games that he has played because of the inconsistency factor. Has he had good games? Absolutely, he has. Oumar Ballo this season in 12 games, right? He started off with 15 points and 6 rebounds, 17 points and 9 rebounds. That's fantastic. Then you drop off a cliff against South Carolina where you have 7 points. You did have 13 boards, so I'll give you credit there. 9 points, 11 rebounds against UNCG. Okay, fine. Louisville, 11.6 boards. Gonzaga had 25 points. I'll take it. Then you had 8 points against Providence, 8 points against Sam Houston, 14 and 18 against Miami and Minnesota. Last 2 games, you've had 8 points, 11 boards, 9 points, 8 rebounds. So he hasn't been bad. Don't get me wrong. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. He's been fine. He's been solid. But there's been some inconsistencies. My point here is he has not been good enough to be getting in trouble off the floor, to have disciplinary issues off the floor. And while this is a major issue for Oumar Ballo, who you would like to have seen as a leader on this team for Indiana, and while this is still really bad news for Indiana basketball and Oumar Ballo in particular, man, this is a horrible look for Mike Woodson, who's already in the fire, who already has most of the Indiana fan base, at least the ones that listen and watch this podcast, who want him gone. They want Mike Woodson to be fired. They would celebrate harder today if Mike Woodson was fired than the celebration of the new year turning in less than 24 hours. Like, that's where the Indiana fan base is sitting right now. You have diehard, long-time, 50-year fans of Indiana basketball who refuse to watch the product that's on the floor because of the guy that's standing on the sidelines. And this is just another example of how he has lost this team, lost this program, and lost this fan base. Mike Woodson, I did an episode on this a couple of days ago, late last week, after Christmas. Mike Woodson's in trouble, big trouble here. Because if you can't control them off the floor, you obviously have not controlled them on the floor very well. You're talking about an Indiana team right now, ladies and gentlemen, with the latest bracketology that came out this morning. Indiana's not in it. We're not a tournament team right now as we get the Big Ten restart underway in just a couple of days with a 1-1 Big Ten record, no good non-conference wins, and a couple of embarrassments in the battle for Atlantis. Mike Woodson's in deep water here. Yeah, I wanted to say something else, but we'll keep it clean. Deep water here. And a terrible look for one of your best players, one of your best transfers to potentially be getting in trouble off the floor. I'm waiting for something to come out from Indiana. If it comes out today after you've already seen this or while you're watching this, apologies. I have not seen anything yet as of this recording. And so Indiana's got to do something. And I'm not saying that coaches have to answer to the fans every time something happens, but something like this, yeah, you need to have more to say than I'm not addressing that. Give me a break, Woodson. His press conferences are worthless anyway. It's why I quit talking about him, because he doesn't give any information. It's the same thing. It's cookie cutter. It's like a politician. It's the same thing over and over and over. Oh, kind of like Indiana's performance on the floor, right? It's the same thing every single day. And now you're having problems off the floor to complement what's happening on the floor? Yeah, this is a bad sign for Indiana and a horrible, horrible look for the head coach of Indiana men's basketball, Mike Woodson. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, going to flip over to the football side of things as two big names have confirmed they will be with Indiana football on next year's team. We'll talk about that coming up next right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to me all the time. I had I've told you this, several subscriptions that I had no idea I even signed up for. I did at some point, just didn't remember. Wasn't even using the service. All I was doing was paying out money for absolutely nothing. And so Rocket Money helped me find all of that as we head into 2025. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit in 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year while using all of the app's premium features. It's the subscription tracker. I don't know why that's hard to say. Subscription tracker for me that I've used to cancel several services, streaming and other financial ones and just weird ones that I didn't even know I signed up for. And Rocket Money helped me find all of those. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your daily spot for all things Indiana athletics. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate everybody taking in the podcast, whether you listen to it, whether you watch it. I've told you that December was a historic month, and I have more on that in the final segment and kind of our New Year's resolution thank yous as we get into 2025. But your support has been incredible on this show. So thank you so much for that. The best month in the history of the show, and you're the reason for that. And so if you're listening on audio, continue to do these things. Subscribe to the channel if you can. Like or give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform on Google. That helps us a ton. And have those notifications turned on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, however you listen. Thank you so much for doing those things. And then for those of you on the YouTube side, you guys have been crushing these things. Liking the video helps it get out there, lets more Indiana fans find it. Also commenting down below your thoughts on the whole Oumar Ballo situation, man. It could get ugly, I think. And so I want to hear your thoughts on that in the YouTube comments, and subscribe to the channel. If you have not already, be sure you do that. We're on our way to 4,200 already. We just hit 4K last week. So you guys are crushing that as well. So thank you so much for your support of Locked On Hoosiers. Well, for football, there's always good news happening on this side of things, it seems like. And two big names have confirmed they will be on the team next season. Now, it's two names that you know. One who was a All-American this past season on Indiana's team, and one that committed out of the transfer portal about a week or so ago. We'll start defensively, where DAngelo Pond, your star corner, one of your best players on defense, one of the leaders on defense for Indiana, confirmed on his social media on Monday that he is, in fact, returning to Indiana. Now, we had reports of this. We felt pretty good about this. The transfer portal is wacky, though. I mean, the portal has become... It's not even the wild, wild west anymore. That's what people described it, myself included. That's what we described it as to start. I don't know how to. I mean, it's like the stock market almost, or the I don't know. I literally don't know how to describe it because it's so wild, so crazy, so open. Tampering happens. Let's just be real. And there's so much money flying around right now that it's impossible to keep up with. And while DAngelo never entered the portal, that doesn't mean a whole lot. That doesn't mean nobody reached out to him. That doesn't mean he didn't listen. That doesn't mean really anything in today's world of college football until they get a handle on all of this. So the fact that despite all of that, DAngelo Pond has returned to Indiana, we need to be celebrating that with Kamara and Aiden Fisher. I mean, you're talking three of the best players defensively in the entire country who are all on the same defense, who are coming back for another season. Also, something we have not mentioned was Brian Haynes, right? Our defensive coordinator got a 2-year contract extension where he's going to be making almost $2 million a year because his defense was one of the best in the country. Does it need to get better? Sure. Absolutely. Do we need more depth out of the transfer portal? Yeah, we do. And we talked about that on yesterday's episode if you want to go check that out. But all of those things combined, right? Kamara, Pons, Fisher, and extending the contract of your very, very talented defensive coordinator, folks, those are great signs. That's incredible that you were able to do that in this era of college football, where these guys could have gone pro, they could have gone many other places that, let's be real, as competitive as Indiana is with NIL, there are other places that would have paid them more. I'm just going to shoot you straight here. There are places that would have paid them more. And they decided to come back to Indiana. They're making money. Don't get me wrong on that. They're making money. But they came back to finish what they started. See if they can get further. See if they can build on a college football playoff type team, a college football playoff team in 2024, and try to do that again and go further in 2025. So that's the first one, that DAngelo Pond is officially back according to his social media. Kamara, Fisher, Pond, huge, huge news for the defensive side of the football. The other one is on the offensive side. This one was in the transfer portal and was news in the portal for Indiana. We knew of the commitment, right? but he has officially signed the quarterback of the future. Fernando Mendoza from California has signed the papers. He will be an Indiana Hoosier in 2025. And some of you may say, well, we knew that. He committed on Christmas Eve. I know. That was a week ago. And a lot can happen in a week. Same way I just talked about with DAngelo Pond or Fisher or Kamara, any of those types of guys. It can happen the same way with guys in the transfer portal, even if you're committed somewhere. You see this all the time with high school recruiting, right? Since when, unless you're, I don't know, Dabo, since when does somebody being committed somewhere stop other big coaches, other big programs, especially in today's world, for picking up the phone, making the call, and just putting a feeler out there just to see if they're really committed to that school and if you really want to go play at that place? And oh, by the way, I happen to have our checkbook sitting on the desk right here. Let's see if we can talk some numbers. You see what I mean here? This happens every day. It happens with every big name player. And you better believe that Fernando Mendoza was right in the middle of all of that. Not saying anything bad about him personally or independently. I'm just saying these things happen. And so he committed on Christmas Eve. That was reported by Pete Thamel, who then reported yesterday that Indiana, he says, per an ESPN source, Fernando Mendoza has signed his paperwork with Indiana today. The deal is done. Hoosiers have their quarterback for 2025. That's from Pete Thamel. This is news because he doesn't tweet it if it's not, or I guess post it now if it's not. That's huge. For Indiana to go get him and sign him is massive, massive news. Because we can now, with 100% confirmation, say that, yeah, Indiana, we have our quarterback for 2025. I think everybody expects Mendoza to step in and win the starting job. But I do want him to win it. I do want him to come in and actually compete and win over the room, win over the team, win over the locker room. Hey, win over the fan base like Curtis Rourke did and earn that starting role. Because I still think another quarterback is needed. I still think you need another dude in the room. Fernando Mendoza is great. He's going to be a really good player here. But you need a room in case something happens to where you're protected. We've got to have that for Indiana. So look, that's huge news as we are getting into the heart of this week with the New Year's Day holiday and things like that. For DAngelo Pond to confirm to us that he's coming back on top of Kamara and Fisher, yes. And for Fernando Mendoza to sign the paperwork. He is in, which I'm going to put this out there. I don't think there's any concern here, but we've seen several times where players have signed their NLI, right, their national letter of intent. You've seen this on the high school side, and then they request to have that shredded, ripped up, and it happens more than you think. Don't think that's an issue here. I think we're good. Think we're fine. Indiana, we've got our dude for 2025. And man, I cannot wait to see what Fernando Mendoza does in an Indiana uniform, what Kurt Cignetti has for him, what this offensive staff has for him, which will be a little bit of a new look offensive staff. Remember, Tino Sunseri is leaving the quarterbacks coach. He's leaving to be the OC and quarterbacks coach out at UCLA. Looking forward to, best of luck to him, but really looking forward to see what Fernando Mendoza does as potentially the starting quarterback for Indiana in 2025. All right, coming up in our final segment here at Locked On Hoosiers, how about some New Year's resolutions for Indiana on this New Year's Eve? We'll talk a little basketball, a little football, and we'll talk you and me about the show and what's coming up in 2025. Okay, that's coming up on our final segment right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here, making this your go-to spot for anything Indiana, your first listen or your first watch every single day. My everydayers, you guys are growing every day, literally, and the reason that this show has been so successful. So more on that in just a second. Do want to do some New Year's resolutions for Indiana athletics, right? And some say, okay, well, what is a resolution? Well, in my mind, it is what can we what can we change from this year that we just lived into next year that will make us better? And we'll start on the football side of things. And we're not going to go super in depth and Buddha type stuff here. We're just talking generics here. And would love to hear your we're just having a little fun here. Just your New Year's resolutions down in the YouTube comments below. For football, I think it's just continue to grow, right? Continue to invest, continue to build on what you did in 2024. And if you're looking for things to change, like what did you do in 24 that you don't want to do in 25, or what didn't you do in 24 that you want to do more of in 25? I mean, I think you're just continuing to build on what you have, but not get stuck in the past. I think that's something that is very easy to do for an up and coming revived program, because I think Indiana is very safe to say is revived for now. But it's very easy to get stuck in the past and say, man, remember back in 2024 when we made the college football playoff? How awesome was that? And then the grandkids say, hey, grandpa, that was 15 years ago, and we haven't done anything since. You see what I'm saying here? It's easy for that to happen. How many people do you hear talking about when whoever made the Rose Bowl back in 84? Okay, who cares? That was 1984. We're going into 2025. So Indiana can't get caught up, Indiana football, that is. We can't get caught up in what we did in 24. You need to build on what you did in 24. And I think that continues with great recruiting efforts, great coaching hires, retaining the coaches that you have, which we just talked about with retaining your DC for another 2 years on his contract and paying him very competitively, right? Those are things going into the new year that really will help this program continue to build. And you need the support and the money from the university, from the athletics department on upgrading facilities around campus. You've got the new practice facility. You need to continue updates on Memorial Stadium. All those things have to happen. They upgraded the game day experience, which I think was a huge success this year. And so that has to continue for Indiana football as New Year's resolutions in 2025. On the basketball side of things, how long do you have? No, I'm just kidding. I think for basketball resolutions, look, Mike Woodson has to change it. I mean, his entire strategy, coaching, teaching, leading, that has to change right now, because if he doesn't, and I've told you this is not news to anybody. This is not breaking news on this show right now. If he does not change, he will be fired. Indiana will go back into mediocrity where we have already been, and we're going to have to restart again. And I know there's a lot of you that are just done with Woody. You're out. You gave him a chance and you're done with him, and you do want that restart. I'm just not a fan of those because they just typically take so long to get back to where you need to be. And so for Indiana as a whole, as Indiana basketball as a program, you've got to win this fan base over again. You've got to get people loving Indiana basketball again, because they simply don't. They don't. Fans are done. They're checked out. They don't even watch the games anymore. I had somebody in the YouTube comments the other day who said, I've been an Indiana fan since, I think it said like the 80s or something like that. And he said, I used to watch games religiously. Now I don't even know when the next game is. People aren't even looking at the schedule. They're not excited. That flame has to be rekindled in 2025 with winning games, competitive games, and just great atmospheres and great performances on the floor. Indiana basketball's got to find ways to do that. And it starts with the main man, the top dog in Mike Woodson, and changing his ways. That's what New Year's is all about, right? Changing the way that you live, changing the way that you act. And Mike Woodson needs to have a serious sit down and look in the mirror. Not personally. I don't know him like that. I'm not calling him out like that. I'm talking in Indiana basketball as the head coach of one of the most historic programs in the world. You have got to change the way you're doing things, or else you're not going to be here anymore. And Indiana is going to have to look for somebody else. Do want to take just a moment as we wrap up today's show, and we wrap up 2024, which is so crazy to think about. Man, this show has been an absolute blast. And I'm not going anywhere. This show is just getting started. We're going to hit the ground running in 2025. No episode tomorrow for New Year's Day. We'll pick back up in the home atmosphere, the home studio. So back on the normal equipment, normal backdrop, everything like that. So it's been a crazy few days, a few weeks of traveling for me. So we'll be back on Thursday, January 2nd. And just want to say thank you so much for your support and helping this channel grow. I've said it several times. December, we crushed other numbers. This is the best month in the history of the show. 2024 was the best year in the history of the show, and I had an absolute blast doing it. And I cannot wait for what 2025 holds. As basketball season ramps up, you've got the off season, you've got the portal on that side of it. We'll get through the summer, and we've got football coming up in August. I cannot wait for 2025, and I want you to be a part of it. So be sure that you're subscribed to our channel on YouTube. You've got those notifications turned on the audio side. And I can't say thank you enough for how you've helped this show grow, help me grow. And we're looking forward to a fantastic 2025 here on the Lockon Hoosiers podcast. No episode tomorrow. We're back on Thursday, okay, Hoosiers fans? So happy New Year to you and yours. We're back in 2025 right here on the Lockon Hoosiers podcast. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.